Everybody, well, I'm so happy that so many of you have stayed through the afternoon. I know those of us who have flown in from the U.S. to be here with you after we had the big lunch today, we all said, I don't know if we're going to make it back there because we all are so sleepy now after eating all your Chilean food. It's really, really good. So thank you for being here. So the guys, actually, since we're a little bit behind schedule, I'm going to shorten up my presentation, and what I was asked to talk with you about is really building on what we talked about this morning, and that is to share a little bit of my story about being a woman entrepreneur, what that was like building my first companies, and how that translates into the things that I do today. And then I'll take a step over into what it is that I do today and how I can hopefully be of help to many of you out there. Does that sound good? Yeah, okay, right. It's sleepy time. All right. Me and one other speaker are holding you from sleep and the drinks. Okay, well, as quick background, just to paint a perspective on who I am and a little bit about what I do, and then I'll go into the backstory. But as you can see sort of in the introductions of who we are, these days I do serve as the entrepreneur in residence for Dell. And I now oversee entrepreneurial initiatives globally for the company. So I have a home in Austin, Texas, but I'm on the road about 90% of the time, out in the market with all of you, listening to what are your needs as entrepreneurs, and again, how can we help you build and grow your businesses successfully by bringing the resources of a Fortune 50 company like Dell into the marketplace to engage with you. I am, as Aaron Sherinian, if he is still here from the United Nations, Sergio Di Cordova and I are one of a few folks that sit on the United Nations Foundation Global Entrepreneurship Council. That gives us the opportunity to work on policy initiatives globally to help entrepreneurs. My focus is women and girls around the world. I'm a former business television host with CNBC. And my background is as a technology entrepreneur. So in the United States, I've built and sold a number of different companies in a number of different industries, from data mining, data analytics, social media, production company. My last two companies were green energy companies. And the common denominator amongst all of those companies was that they had a really strong technology backbone. And so I grew up as an entrepreneur really seeing the power and the benefit of how you could use technology as a key escalator to your business success. We'll talk a little bit about that. But you know what, I'm actually going to take off my shoes because I am afraid I'm going to walk off that edge there. So just ignore that if you don't mind. This way I'm firmly grounded. That edge, there's like a big drop right there. I think that's where the symphony would normally be. And we don't have one of those today. So you know, I've had a lot of successes as an entrepreneur. I'm very appreciative, very grateful, feel very blessed, especially as a woman entrepreneur, to have had some of these successes. But I think that it's especially important to also share with you some of the challenges. Because I think that whether you're a man or a woman, as I talked about earlier today, we all have those challenges as we're trying to build and grow our businesses. And I don't think we talk about that enough. And part of that is because as entrepreneurs, when you're trying to go out into the world, and I think Robin was talking about that a little bit earlier, we're constantly trying to sell our ideas to customers, investors, partners. We want to always come across as a super confident person when at the same time we're really struggling with a lot of internal demons, if you will, from, oh my God, I'm going to run out of money, to I'm not really sure what I'm doing. But all of these things that we struggle with as entrepreneurs, and I think that the more that we're willing to shine a light on some of that and connect with one another, that'll help us overcome those challenges even faster. And so just to highlight one of my stories, when I first started out as an entrepreneur, it was now about 15 years ago, and I had gone to business school. The University of Texas at Austin, I actually went to get a law degree and a business degree, and I really thought that if I was a lawyer and a business person, I would be really smart, and I would know, what it was that I was trying to do in the world. Well, while I was in school, I started launching little ventures. So I never finished the law school part, but I did finish the business school part. And at about the same time that I came out of business school, there was this guy in Austin, Texas, who had launched a company essentially out of the trunk of his car, and he's now making billions of dollars out into the marketplace. And who is this guy? Michael Dell. And I thought, well, gosh, you know, if this guy can not have finished college and he can launch $1 billion company out of the trunk of his car, why couldn't I do that? And at the same time, the internet was was starting to boom. There was a whole internet boom, and I was seeing people all over the place, a lot of young guys, really, that were basically raising millions of dollars off of napkin sketches. Not even real business ideas. They were raising millions of dollars and building these amazing companies. And so it was really just being in that environment and graduating from school, knowing I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I thought, I just want to build $1 billion company. Why not? If Michael Dell can do it, why can't I do it? You know, I literally had no idea what I was going to do. I just wanted to be part of what was happening, part of this internet boom. And I knew at the time that the secret of where all the money was going was in the internet space. So I made the decision that I would become an entrepreneur, and I would somehow figure out an internet-related business, and I would go and build it and become $1 billion company. That is literally how I started. That was going to be it. And so I went off to think, well, what could I do in the internet space that would actually grow and be successful? And at the time, the internet was still a pretty challenging place to interact with. It's not like today where it says, you know, hi, Maria, good to see you again. I saw you were just here. You might be interested in this. Or, you know, hi, Jose, I saw you were looking at this. You might be interested in that. There wasn't any of that going on. You had to really know what it is that you wanted on the internet to be able to use it effectively. And I was just very inspired by maybe I could make it an easier place to do business. But how would I do that? What would I do? And it was fascinating because I knew at the time that I needed help. And that, you know, in terms of lesson number one for any really good entrepreneur is just acknowledge you need help and actually go get the help. And in my case, it's going and I wanted to find a mentor, and I highly recommend that to everybody. If you don't have that yet, find somebody who has been successful at what it is you want to do and figure out a way that you can create a win-win, that it's worth their time to want to help you be successful. And in my case, I was trying to be like Michael Dell, as I mentioned. And I knew I couldn't go ask Michael Dell for help. He was way too busy building his venture. But what I did think about was, well, who helped Michael figure out how to build his company? Who's that guy? Well, that guy happened to be a guy named Dr. George Kosmetsky, who was also the guy who was the benefactor of the business school that I had gone to. So my take at the time was I went to Dr. Kosmetsky, and the win-win approach to him was, well, gosh, you know, I'm thinking, I'm looking at all these companies that are raising millions of dollars off of napkin sketches, and I wasn't seeing any women out there doing this. And I thought to myself, wouldn't this be great for Dr. Kosmetsky if he had a graduate from his business school that was a woman, and what if my idea, whatever that was going to be, actually even worked, even partially worked, and it was successful? And he could say, yes, this girl went to my school and I helped her. You know, I thought that could be of value to him. And it was with that idea that I went to Dr. Kosmetsky and I said, Dr. K, I really want to build $1 billion company. I know you've helped Michael. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. I know it's going to be in the internet space, but I would really love for you to be my mentor. And Dr. Kosmetsky said, Ingrid, I will mentor you under one condition. Now, this guy was in his 80s at the time. I think he's like 84 years old, okay? And this was his one condition. He said, I'll mentor you, but you have to come and pick me up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And you have to take me to my favorite restaurant which was actually a really bad restaurant, like bad for you, and the food wasn't good, but he loved it. So I had to take him there from 4 to 6 in the morning once a month. And he said, if you do that, I will mentor you. Because by 6 o'clock, now think about this. This is an 80-something-year-old guy, okay? Most people are just kind of hanging back, retiring, whatever, being loose, whatever it is. He was on one of his planes at 6 o'clock in the morning, traveling around the country, going and looking at his investments. Okay, so this is the power of somebody who is mentally engaged, mentally wants to give back, and is mentally involved in what's going on. So I said, great, I'll do it. So we went off, and he started mentoring me. At the same time, as I told you, I'm trying to figure out how do I make the internet a better place. I wanted to build a billion-dollar company, didn't know how I was going to do it. He's now my mentor. What am I going to do? Well, I happened to find a piece of technology that it actually came out of a company that my father was running, and it was being used for a completely different application. It's the short story of what this technology was you guys know when you watch television and you see the wars that are going on, you see the helicopters in those wars, right? You see that on the screens? Okay. Well, in the United States, every time they think there's a problem with one of those helicopters, they ground it to look at it. It's like having a car checkup, right? Well, every time they would ground one of those helicopters, whether there was something wrong with it or not, it would cost $300,000 just to ground it and look at it, okay? So my father's company had developed some technology that basically sat on the black box of the helicopter, and it would monitor the vibrations of the helicopter. And with 99.7% accuracy, it would identify if something was wrong with the helicopter, but it would also predict if nothing was wrong with it, but something was likely going to happen, it would predict what that was. So a very powerful piece of technology. And it was doing this all by listening to the vibrations. Okay, are you following me? Yeah? Okay. So I looked at that technology, and again, here's what happens to us as entrepreneurs. We start with a big idea, not quite sure how we're going to do it. We start getting creative. How are we going to solve this idea? How are we going to make the internet an easier place to work? Well, I looked at that technology and thought, what if we could take that technology and apply it in the internet space where it's essentially zeros and ones going back and forth? It's like a vibration. But instead of actually noise, you're getting a vibration of numbers, right? So what if we could use it in the same way and do predictions in real time about who's on there, what are they doing, what's happening in this internet? So that was the leap, the mental leap that I took. And it was that mental leap that I went back to Dr. K and I said, Dr. K, I have figured out the billion-dollar idea. And I told him what it was, okay? This is month 1 or 2. And he said, my dear, you've got a great idea, but it's not the billion-dollar idea. Great one, not the billion-dollar. And he said, you keep working on it. You're getting somewhere, though. Okay, so while I'm trying to figure it out, I'm being like any good entrepreneur, and I'm out there hustling. I'm trying to keep my company, this new company I've created, alive. So I'm finding customers that I can do consulting with that'll give me some money, some revenue to keep my company going. I had started attracting some developers that I wanted to have help me figure out how can we take this black box technology and apply it over here to the internet. So I had now people that I had to pay for, right? And I hadn't raised any investment money yet. So I'm hustling, trying to make more sales, consult. Okay, I go into and design at the same time. So wearing multiple hats like we all do. Month 4 of working with Dr. Kosmetsky, I went back to him and I said, Dr. K, I have figured out the billion-dollar idea. This is it. And Dr. Kosmetsky looked at my idea and he said, my dear, this is a great idea. This is not the billion-dollar idea. Just keep at it. Okay. Go back, hustle, hustle, hustle. I'm trying to pay for my people. I'd come over here and I'd try to design ideas and then, hustle again. And then month 5 rolls around and I go meet with Dr. Kosmetsky. I've got it figured out. Same thing. My dear, great idea, not the billion-dollar one. Okay, I get into month 6, month 7, At this point, I legitimately had a team of people that I was responsible for paying for, and I was starting to run out of money, and I was getting very tired. I felt like I had an idea. I felt like it was time to go raise money, but Dr. Kosmetsky said, no, this is not the right time, and you don't have the idea yet. So went back in month 7, month 8, and I did start talking to investors, and I was not having any luck. And this goes back to what I shared with you earlier today. One of my advisors pulled me aside, and that's when he shared with me then. He said, Ingrid, I like you a lot, and I'd like to see you be successful. But I want to share with you that, and this is the story I said, you don't look like, act like, sound like, or talk like any of the CEOs and the entrepreneurs that these investors are used to funding. I don't know that you will ever get this done. And that's what he said. And I decided at that point that I was going to prove him wrong and prove that just because of how I look or I talk or I approach doing things, that I still, in fact, could be an exceptional entrepreneur and still build a really great company. But I'll tell you, I was very scared, and I was very sad. I was very sad about that, and I was very worried that I wasn't going to get it done. And by month 8, when I went back to Dr. Kosmetsky with my idea, he looked at it again, same thing, great idea, not the billion-dollar idea. By month 9, I literally was 1 day away from being totally out of money, completely out of money. No investor wanted to talk to me. Dr. Kosmetsky felt like I hadn't figured this out, and I was about to lose everything, literally everything. And I was on a plane ride, and I started praying like crazy. And I just said, God, if there's any time that you're ever going to help me out, please, if I'm supposed to do this, please help me understand what this idea is so that I can take it to Dr. Kosmetsky and hopefully have an idea that we can now move forward and build as a business. And it was on that flight and just trusting in that moment of prayer and meditation, and I meditate daily now, that the idea became very clear. And I literally, like you hear in the movies, the idea shot through my hand, and I scribbled on this napkin, literally a napkin that was about this big, scribble, 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 scribble. The minute I saw it, I knew I had it. I knew it. And the plane landed, and I called Dr. Kosmetsky, and I said, Dr. Kosmetsky, I know it's not 4 o'clock in the morning, and it's not the month that we're supposed to meet or the time we're supposed to meet, but I've got the idea, and I need to show it to you. He said, well, come on down and let me see. And I showed him the napkin sketch, and he said, my dear, you have figured it out. And he said, do you think you can get this into a PowerPoint presentation and have it ready for investors tomorrow, the next day? And I said, absolutely, absolutely. So I did. I stayed up all night, put it onto a PowerPoint presentation, and showed it to some investors that came in the next day. And this investor saw my presentation. He shakes my hand, and he said, Ms. Vanderveldt, thank you very much for your presentation. Nice to meet you, and we'll be in touch. And he left. And I said to the person who introduced us, I said, well, what happened? Did he not see this is a billion-dollar idea? And in the back of my mind, I'm crying. I'm out of money. I've got to pay for my people. Dr. Kosmetsky said I had the great idea, so why isn't this guy funding it? And the guy who introduced us said, I'll give him a call, and I'll call you back later and let you know what's happening. I get a call that night, and the guy who introduced us said, Ingrid, Bill, the investor, he said, he's not going to fund your company. My first reaction was, why? Oh my gosh. And I'm scared. And he said, he wants to buy that napkin sketch for $2.5 million. $2.5 million off a napkin sketch. Now, the lesson here, which I should have done then, is if somebody wants to buy a napkin sketch from you for $2.5 million, sell. Sell it. You can go out and do another idea. But I told that investor, I said, no, you tell him he's got the opportunity to come in and fund this venture, and if he doesn't come in as an active participant, then he's out of the deal. This is the last thing. I'm so scared saying this. I am totally scared. Sure enough, the next day he showed up with a $250,000 check. And that was the first check that funded my first venture. And as soon as he put his money in, Dr. Kosmetsky, this is a guy who knew I needed the money, who's a multi-billionaire, who's been mentoring me. And you can't ask somebody like that when they know. If they don't actively just offer you money, you can't ask. It's just not appropriate. Dr. Kosmetsky was waiting for somebody else to come in and validate his thinking. So when that $250,000 came in, Dr. Kosmetsky then wrote a check. Then he called his next friend, wrote a check. Then they called their friends, wrote a check, wrote a check, wrote a check. And before you knew it, I had $7.5 million into that first company. And we ended up building that company. We ended up selling it off. We didn't make not much money on that deal. We ended up getting caught up in the dot-com bust. So we didn't make money there. But we did end up selling some of the assets of that venture. But that lesson, what I learned in that first company, in that experience was extraordinary. And it's a few things that carry me on today. So first of all, as I mentioned, it's the power of having not just any mentor, but the right mentor. Somebody who has actually done what it is that you want to do that can give you really valuable advice on how do you overcome your challenges, how do you move the ball forward. The second thing is that access to networks that I talked about a little bit earlier. I can't tell you how valuable it is to have a like-minded group of peers around you who can support you in what it is that you're doing. I didn't have that in that very first venture, but I can assure you I very quickly, as soon as that money came in, I aligned myself with other entrepreneurs that I could strategize with who were going through similar things. The third thing is the value of having the right money in. Because there are a lot of people out there who are able to just write a check. We heard about that earlier today. Bill Tye was talking about that. How, one of his biggest challenges as a money guy today is that people aren't even just looking for the money. They need all this other stuff, and that's absolutely right. Because all of us see the future of innovation is happening from all the new entrepreneurs that are coming out there. You are the people we want to do business with, but we know that it's like, yes, we can write a check, but what you're looking for, just like I looked for from Dr. Kosmetsky, is how can you actually help me make this idea reality, but help me grow it and make it a success. And so those lessons really led me to where things are today. After I sold the last two companies that I was running, I was very inspired on this vision. We talked a little bit about that earlier today, that my work going forward was to work with women globally, worldwide, to help other women hopefully avoid some of the things that I certainly went through. And I shared just one story, and there are so many, and we all have them. But help other women really see themselves as leaders and as successful entrepreneurs, because we can build these great companies. We do have the talent to do it, and we bring it through a new set of eyes, a fresh set of eyes, in terms of how do you think about things, how do you put businesses together, and we need especially the women to get involved and be involved in this process. But it was that vision of empowering 1 billion women by 2020 that led me to my work with Dell. And it's funny because I mentioned how important it is to have the right mentor, the right networks, the right money. When I was inspired with this vision to work with women worldwide, the one company that was putting investments into women around the world was Dell, through something called the Dell Women's Entrepreneur Network. And I actually had, it's a network of women, so entrepreneurs and CEOs who come together once a year to support one another and interact with the Dell executives on strategy, how can we work with each other to build our companies. When I got invited to the first one, which is now 5 years ago, I turned the invitation down. I was running my green energy companies, and I said to the friend that had suggested to Dell I was invited, I said, what do they know about my business? This is a large company. I am an entrepreneur, small company trying to build my venture. What do they really know about it? My friend, and thank God she did, she said, Ingrid, trust me. I know what's going on with the company, and you really need to come and do this. And thank God I did. Again, the power of having the right networks, because that changed my path personally and professionally. I went to this event, the Dell Women Entrepreneur Network. I saw how this large company was trying to figure out how to help us be successful. Between the first and the second Dwen, my company sold. And after that second Dwen that I went to, which was in Rio de Janeiro, on that flight back, I knew I needed to talk to the executives at Dell. So you have Michael Dell, and at the time you have a guy named Steve Felice that ran Dell. And I called Steve, and I said, Steve, I'd love to sit down with you and talk with you about this idea to work with women worldwide. And it was out of that conversation that we dreamt up the Entrepreneur in Residence position to be a bridge from the outside in, to be a voice for our entrepreneurial community, and to really help Dell as an organization figure out how can we innovate with people just like you? How do we form authentic relationships with people just like you so that we can do business together in a way that helps you win and helps Dell win in the long run? And that role, when I started, was supposed to be 6 months long. 2 weeks a month in with Dell, and then 2 weeks a month out running my investments. And within 2 weeks, I think, that became full-time, more than full-time. And within the first 3 months, our programs were so successful that I ended up running programs globally for the company. My next business that I built was for Dell. It's called the Dell Innovators Credit Fund. And I built that plan. It was a $100 million fund. And within 6 days of launching that fund, we more than doubled what the internal finance teams thought we could do in 4 years. And the reason that we had that kind of success is because guys like Michael Dell and Steve Fleece and the executive leadership team of Dell at the time, but as Marcus has talked about many times today, global corporations just like Dell are looking to us to help them innovate. They're looking to us to say, if you want to do business with the entrepreneurs, if you want to do business with the women, then we need to create programs that are by and for us that we would have wanted, in my case, that I would have wanted when I was building my own ventures. And because they handed those keys over and collaborated with us on how to do that, we were able to create that kind of success. And so what that means for you now is we've created something called the Dell Center for Entrepreneurs. And this is now a place, and it's open for you. It's an online and an offline initiative. And it basically provides you access to 4 key critical areas that help all entrepreneurs kind of build and grow their businesses. The first one is access to knowledge. So we have a lot of entrepreneurs that come in and say, could we meet with your social media experts? We're trying to keep our costs down, or we can't afford to do social media in a big way, and we'd love to get some ideas on strategy. Could you help us? We say, yeah. And we put together events for them. We'll introduce them to people inside the company. We'll give them access to that knowledge. The second thing is access to the networks. So we put together events. One of the reasons, again, that I'm here is because some of my colleagues have been involved. I've been hearing what's going on in Chile, and I know the power of networks. That if I can come and be here with you and listen from you what it is that you need, I can cater things to serve and help you be better, more successful down here in Chile. Anything that we can do along those lines. The third area, of course, is access to technology. That's our bread and butter. So our expertise along those lines is we know how to build great companies. We know how to take a company from this to this. And we make our people available for free to strategize with you on how can you use technology to build and grow your company successfully. And then the fourth piece of that is the access to capital piece. And that's a piece where, so we make all these suggestions, but now how do you actually pay for that? And we'll provide credit financing to qualified companies to do that. We also have an equity fund where we'll make investments, and we do that through Dell Ventures. And so with that, I welcome you all to come and see what's there in the Dell Center for Entrepreneurs. You can find it at dell.com/entrepreneurs. And for all of you out there, especially the women out there, please keep doing the great things that you're doing. I hope some of this advice, the story, is helpful to just hear that we all go through some of these challenging times, but it's part of the journey to get to the other side, and we really need you to go out there and continue being successful, because you are how large companies like us now innovate our future, and we really see